Hydraulic steering can be an expensive option, and sometimes when you buy a used boat, it doesn't come that way. But that doesn't mean you can't spend an afternoon in the shop retrofitting your boat. So this week on My Boat, that's what we're going to do. We're at Sandy Cove Marine, and we're going to retrofit this 2001 Gru with a hydraulic steering system from HYCO.
While it may seem like a complicated job, the HYCO system from HYCO is quite simple. The pump gets installed at the helm, and your hydraulic hoses run to the transom, connecting to the cylinder ram. Before I could do anything, I had to remove the old mechanical system from the Gru, so I got to work. I started first by disconnecting the mechanical cable from the outboard. After that, I removed the linking arm. Since we didn't need to save any of the parts, I used our Bosch Sawzall and a heavy-duty metal blade to get through the aircraft cable-filled mechanical cable. Heavy-duty cutters were brought in to help with the cylinder. And finally, the Sawzall finished off the job. I then turned my attention to the helm. Since this boat had tilt steering, it gave me an extra step to complete. Once I got the wheel off, I then removed the rubber boot, along with the plastic housing. This gave me access to the tilt mechanism. After removing the 2 Phillips screws, I could then pull off the tilt mechanism. 2 set screws held the collar in place. When these were removed, the system was released, and I could remove the old helm and cable.
So now that we have the old assembly taken apart, we can now begin to put the new hydraulic system in. And what's nice about this system from HYCO is that the tilt arm comes in 2 pieces, so we can actually attach it to the motor without having to remove it. But we're actually first going to start by assembling the helm.
Luckily enough, the hole size was the same for the UP20F helm. Unfortunately, the bolt pattern wasn't. Before installing the pump, I first removed the plastic covers and installed the supplied 90-degree fittings. Once they were hand tightened, I plugged the holes with shop towels to avoid contamination. The helm fit perfectly into place, and I was able to secure it. Next, I ran the hydraulic hoses up from the transom to the helm. Make sure you keep the dust covers on the hoses to avoid contamination. The color-coordinated hoses were a nice touch by HYCO, making it easy to correspond not only with the helm, but once you get back to the motor. Next, I opted to hook up the hoses to the hydraulic ram and bleeding the line with the help of gravity. You'll notice I used Loctite instead of Teflon tape as HYCO recommends. Bleeding the system was simple. I had a helper at the helm pour the hydraulic fluid and turn the wheel. I then pushed the ram to one side and opened the bleeder valve. Once the fluid runs free of air bubbles, you can switch to the other side and repeat. Once complete, the wheel should turn lock to lock. As the wheel turns, the ram should move almost instantly. If you have very little play, there is no air in the lines. It was then time to mount the hydraulic cylinder. I first installed the 2-piece tilt arm. I then affixed the cylinder to the engine, first by attaching the link arm. I then installed the collar over the old mechanical connection on the starboard side and the provided spacers on the port side. I was then able to install each of the 90-degree connectors, making sure to use Loctite. With the connections finger tight, I then snugged them completely down, along with securing the lock washers. Finally, all I had left to do was secure the wheel.
Well, the system's calibrated, and that puts an end to this My Boat project. As always, I was really impressed with the HYCO system and how straightforward and user-friendly it was to install. Now, adding a hydraulic system will not only help when you're running, but will definitely come in handy in those hairy docking situations as well. It's certainly a project I'd recommend giving a try.